Hi, I'm Jim Rogers. I'm an instructor on LinkedIn Learning with courses on construction management and construction technology, and I'm a huge fan of digital workflows in construction. Today, I'm joined by Robin Hunt, a fellow LinkedIn Learning instructor who is an expert in data capture and analysis, and Miles Morton, who is a process improvement manager for Chase Construction. Stick with us as we talk about capturing and leveraging data during construction that can help us improve our processes. Today on Thoughts from the Field. Hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me today from wherever you are in the world. I see people dropping in the comments already. If you want to drop in the comments or the chat box there and introduce yourself, I'm always interested to see where people are joining me from, what part of the world you're from, and what type of work you do in the construction industry as well. So, like I said, we're going to talk about data in construction and process improvement today. But before we do that, just a couple of things that I wanted to mention. One is I have an ongoing poll in the LinkedIn feed. If you go to my profile and look at activity, you can find that poll. And I'm just curious, I get questions probably multiple times every single week on, hey, I'm new to the industry, or I've been in the field and I want to get in the construction management arena. What kind of certificate programs are out there? So I have a poll that asks some questions about what you want to see in a certificate program for construction management. If you get a chance, go find it in the LinkedIn feed and tell me, give me your answer. It'll take you just 30 seconds or so to answer that poll. I also wanted to point out that next week is Safety Stand Down Week. So in the US, OSHA, this first week in May, always asks us to do safety stand downs on projects to raise awareness about the hazards of falls in construction. Still the number one cause of death in the construction industry, falls from heights, but also close behind that, falls from ladders is a big percentage of those fatalities in falls. So during that week, if your company's not already planning something, I'd encourage everybody to look at your job sites and take, just a 5, 10, 15-minute stand down period on your project sometime next week, just to talk about falls in construction, the hazards, and what you can do to mitigate them. All right, so with that, I want to go ahead and bring my guests up on the screen. Welcome, Robin. Welcome, Miles. So I've got two guests today, which I'm really excited about. I've got Robin, who is a fellow LinkedIn Learning instructor and is a data expert. But Robin also works with construction companies, the commercial construction industry, specifically harnessing some of that data. So excited to hear Robin's perspective. And then I brought Miles in as well, who I've known for actually many years now. And Miles has had the opportunity to go from managing projects in the field and from a construction management perspective, and then kind of into the office to work on process improvement and working with data, and then leveraging that data to help improve things within actual construction companies. So excited to have both of you here. Welcome. So I did quick introductions, but Robin, go ahead and say hi and tell us what you want us to know about you.
Yeah. Let's see. I love data. Obviously.
Your LinkedIn bio is data. What is it? Data junkie and Star Wars.
Yeah. I love Star Wars. I'm a data junkie. Probably the best gig I got as a mom of my two precious teenagers, precious being a loose term. They're teenagers, right? But I've been working in data for 20 plus years, and I got my introduction to real data design with a construction company. And so I've just really worked in construction data and types of data and back office construction data really literally my entire career. So I'm excited to talk about data and construction today. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks for being here, Miles. Welcome, and thanks for joining me. You're here just down the street from me in my part of the world.
Yes. Yeah, no, here local to Phoenix. Yeah, no, super jazzed to be here. Definitely appreciate the invite. I also can nerd out and geek out about some data and continuous improvement efforts. And really, I started in the field, grew project engineer, project manager, and then kind of helped my previous company in their process improvement, continuous improvement efforts. And as a result of that, we really realized how we were going to actually see if we were succeeding or not. And that's what led us into this data environment, which I really helped, I think, build a pretty sophisticated data infrastructure and data environment for this company to really glean into how we were doing on some very specific things. And, data doesn't lie. It doesn't care how you feel about things. It just tells you how things really are. So that's what's great about it.
Yeah, unless you don't like what it tells you, huh? Then it's kind of a bummer. Then it's kind of
Right.
a bummer. So I'm looking at the chat, and we've got a ton of people that were pre-registered and joining us. We got people from India, Oregon, Australia. I see Dallas, Texas. We've got somebody from Ukraine joining us. So clearly, this is a hot topic. We definitely get criticized in construction for not adopting technology fast enough, not leveraging data. So I'm gonna start with you, Miles. Like, what? Again, you kind of went from the field and that project management realm to okay, I'm going to help this company put together this whole data analysis program, process improvement program, where we're gonna gather data, we're gonna analyze data, and we're gonna use it to improve the company. Just very broadly, what was the? I guess how did that start, or maybe a better question, if you're a company that is at that point and you really don't feel like you're leveraging your data, you're probably capturing data, because I know Robin's going to tell us in a minute, you're probably capturing data whether you think you are or not, but you may not feel like you're leveraging data. Where do you start? Robin or Miles, where do you start?
That's a tough question. It's, in my experience, everybody has it at least somewhere in the forefront of their brain of, I want to look at data, or what's being captured, or how do I see this specific metric or KPI or, formula, whatever it is. But I think that the part that gets overlooked is the scale of what it really takes to transform and visualize good data. And so a lot of people think that through just a simple CSV export out of my project management system, upload it into Excel, like I can get whatever I need to. And that's a really great start to try and help you figure out what exactly you're trying to measure. But to really get into an intelligent dashboard, the back end to support that is really a lot more complex than I think people understand or know. And so my hurdle when first starting was discovering that, and really, okay, we know we want this dashboard, and we know we want it to have some pretty trend lines and some cards with some good KPIs and really help us make some more intelligent business decisions. Then once we settled on, okay, this is our vision, this is what we need, taking a couple steps back to understand what the infrastructure is really going to take to support that, to help automate it so you don't have a staff that's doing a lot of manual entry or manual kind of data moving and cleanup. And so the automation piece, the centralized data environment to really feed that and make it worthwhile is the important piece. And that's, I think, what requires the buy-off and the understanding when you first get started.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here too, if that's okay, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that we've seen success with in our projects, and whether it be construction, we serve multiple industries, not just construction, all of them, and every situation is different, but it's all uniquely the same. what happens is, for some people, it becomes very overwhelming. You know, you have leadership who understands we need these metrics, we need to look at these things, but when you take a step back, your infrastructure is, and I don't mean infrastructure as in technical infrastructure, I mean like the whole infrastructure of your company. You know, it's like, where do you start? So one thing I would encourage anybody that's exploring modernizing your data and trying to get more out of it is just bite off the elephant one bite at a time. Like, you just can't do all of it. You have to decide what are the key areas where we need to improve. Like, what kind of gains would we see? You know, and then also there's more to data than visualizing metrics. Data is a living, this is where I go crazy, but data is a living thing, and it can do things for you. And it can do nothing for you if you don't start capturing it with intention. So I would also say, in my experience, and I love this and I'm intentional about it, one thing I like about the construction firms we support is they're old. You know, they're not new. They're 50, 60, 70 plus years old. And what the benefit to a data worker professional is that you have processes. And so another thing is focusing on those processes and figuring out where data is not integrated into those processes can be super helpful to pick up the speed. I think, you know, we ask companies all the time, like, do you have any of these processes documented? And they're like, But in a construction firm, there is a lot of documentation in and around processes just naturally, especially if they're an older firm. So I would say one bite at a time, figure out where you're going to get your most gains. And then, look at where people are dying in spreadsheets. That's a great place to start.
So you mentioned the process and the process documentation. You said a lot of the companies you were working with are older companies. Is this harder to do in a new company or an older company? Is it does having like legacy systems?
Well, so I mean, I'm legacy at this point. I've been doing data for so long. An older company steeped in process versus a newer company who have still trying to figure out their processes have unique challenges that are very distinctly different from each other.
Okay, so to get started, though, for a company to get started, before we even think about the data, what I'm hearing is it's probably much more important to have your processes in place and your processes documented. That's maybe your starting point before you even start to capture data.
Well, yeah, because if you want to improve a process, and Miles can definitely jump in. If you want to improve a process, step number one is to just figure out what is the process. You can't improve it if it's not documented, workflowed out. And again, like, you don't have to go crazy, but you got to start somewhere. And I love those processes because, again, you can easily see where the data has been accounted for or has not been included in the process. Miles, I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, one thing that data will really shine a light on is the strength of your processes in your company. And in order to really know what you want to measure, you have to know where you're coming from and where you want to go, right? So your current state, your current baseline, and then how people are feeding this data engine. And so, hey, we really want to understand the time it takes to complete X widget. Well, who's ultimately putting that data into the system? And it really trickles down to the far end customer, or the boots on the ground worker. And once you start, you feel like you have really good processes in place and you have strong standard operating procedures and you have these good systems and you feel like you know what your current state is, and then you start looking at the data and it really starts to poke holes in your overall system. And, but for the better. I think that it definitely, I wouldn't start with data and then try and figure out your process. I maybe wouldn't do that, but it definitely is a reinforcement, that measure piece, to hold people accountable, yourself included. Hey, this process isn't working. People aren't, it's garbage data, or, it's just too difficult to collect what we ultimately need. So let's maybe reevaluate what we're doing to get to that point. And so I definitely would agree with Robin. I would absolutely make sure that you have a strong emphasis on your process, but then also I think an element people overlook is the people too. Your people really have to be engaged. Your people have to be bought in. Your people have to be willing to do something a certain way because they now see it in this dashboard that tells them and the information they need to make more intelligent decisions in their day-to-day life. And so it's really got to have an emphasis on the people as well with the process before data can really be as strong as it can in a company.
Okay.
Singing it. Yeah, because if you don't, also I think I hope I don't offend all the data firms and the whole world here, but you really you must have, okay, if you're nowhere in this process yet, okay, you've already heard us say, let's look at your processes and see where they are and see where the data is either accounted for in the process or it's not. I can assure you someone's doing data somewhere that should be tied in. But if you don't build the data literacy skills of your workforce and try to get to a fluency level with your people who understand construction, then working with shiny, fancy data analytics firms is going to get you nowhere you want to be. So I would also say in that process of, hey, we're starting, I would encourage just easy lifts on data training, find out who your Excel gurus are, look at what they've got going on, what are they doing. That's a treasure trove of information there. But yeah, you need to start working on the data literacy of your people, because again, too, you have people at the end of the day that are entering data, and the more literate they become, the more they understand how important that data quality is. And yes, to that comment, if it is not simple, people will not use it. Why? There is a reason why that is, because they have a job to perform, and it's not to be fancy at data.
So in that vein of staying simple, I guess we were having a chat beforehand, and both of you kind of have mentioned Excel and Excel spreadsheets, and Miles, you made the point earlier, pre-live, that a lot of people in construction tend to beat up on Excel, which I agree with you, right? I mean, they sort of look at you funny, like, oh, you're keeping track of this in an Excel spreadsheet? Why would you do that? You should go out and pay money for this tool or something. And both of you had some pretty strong comments on that. I'll start with you, maybe Miles. Like, what is Excel a valid tool?
Yes, 100%. Now I might be biased. I love Excel, and it definitely has its time and place. So I'm not going to tell you that Excel is the be all end all solution, but I think that it's really intuitive and lightweight enough where you can build a lot of proof of concepts. So it might not be fully integrated and fully automated, but it gives somebody a really quick access to a tool that they're familiar with to start playing with data. And it really helps introduce this data space and, hey, what do you want to see, and what does the data actually look like in its current state? And so that's why I love it, because right away you can start, tinkering with it and kind of understanding, and then that helps you communicate more effectively to someone like Robin or a third-party firm. Hey, this is kind of what we're looking to do. Here's some spreadsheets or some exports that we've kind of understood that we think we know what's in here. Like, we just really need you, Robin, to help elevate us to this next level. But that's like step 2, right? One bite at a time, like you said. And I think the first bite is really palatable in Excel, and it's a really good tool for that purpose.
I would also say that everybody's already paying for it. And so everybody in the organization probably already has a license to it. They probably already know how to get around in it. It doesn't cost you anything other than time, effort, and just paying attention to it. When people tell me, oh, we shouldn't use Excel, there is a time and place for Excel. So to Miles's point earlier, yes, absolutely. But telling me I shouldn't use Excel is like telling me I should not have a hammer in my toolbox. Give me a break. It is an amazing tool. It's continuously improved. It connects to data sets that are a dreamboat. I don't even, like, Power Query is a game changer. It is, again, you can do a lot. And I would tell people, hey, if you want to get the most out of a firm like mine, if you can't put it into an Excel chart, then we need to figure out how to get you into Excel charts. But if you can get your data into an Excel chart, I can take that information and then figure out how to get it where you can run that chart all the time, see those metrics all the time. Definitely at the next level, but at the ground level, yeah, everybody in the organization's already got Excel. They're probably already using it. And if they're not getting training in it to modernize their skills, you should include that in your startup modernization plan.
Yeah, I actually have a great use case. We, at my previous company, were just a little hesitant to, spend all this money, tens of thousands, upwards of 100,000, depending on the complexity of this data environment. And so for the first year or so, when we really wanted to start publishing to the company the different metrics, and it was, how are we doing on training or safety or financial, whatever, we built everything in Excel for a year. And it was a little bit of manual importing, and yes, a lot of Power Query. When they added that to the Excel suite, I was very excited. And I just would manipulate some spreadsheets, have a couple different data sources come in, and I'd simply just take pictures and post JPEGs or PNGs as a start. And it was an introduction to at least get people to seeing things. And the end users all of a sudden start, oh, this is what's important, and this is the metric I need to worry about. But when we started with PNGs posted on a website, there was no intelligent automation. It just was Excel. And that lasted for a year, but it really helped us understand what we wanted. And when we did decide to go spend the money on a more intelligent solution, I think that it shaved several months off of this discovery process. We got into it a lot sooner, and we didn't scare anybody away. We kind of were able to implement and get people used to this way of thinking while we were building our more robust long-term solution. So it definitely is a powerful tool, and I highly recommend it.
That's a great plan. Love it.
So how do you get, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and Miles, in your example, in your use case then, how does the data get into that Excel spreadsheet, right? So, I mean, when I think about digitizing workflows and capturing data out in the field, I'm looking at software tools that help people get that data, quickly and easily. How do you get the data, I guess, from where it lives into that spreadsheet? Is it multiple spreadsheets? Is it one spreadsheet? How do you pull all that together?
That's a tough question to answer. I guess, and Robin, I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this as well. For me, it's very difficult. And you really have to understand and take a step back on what is your source of truth for the data you're looking at. And that was a big struggle for us, as we had, like, let's say something as easy as a company directory with a name of who the employee is, maybe their title, a cell phone number, and then how long they've been at the company, maybe what their last job they billed time to was, and like these simple things. And you're like, oh, it's probably all here. Well, it turns out that information is coming from 4 different databases in our company. We have our, Active Directory on the IT side that's managing information. We have our HRIS that's managing information. We have our payroll data, and they're all different. So, I would have to grab exports, whether it be just simple CSV or text files or whatever the database let me export, and then bringing that manually into Excel, and then using the power of Power Query to combine all that information into an intelligent, transformed, good, clean-looking data set. And so it's ugly, and you don't really know where everything is. And a lot of times your intuition, or what you think something is totally flipped on its head once you start getting into it. So it's just careful, methodical thought, really trying to get some of these raw exports, however you can get them, and then seeing where you can like match up different keys or identifiers and merge some data and clean it up. So
he is geeking out over here. Yeah. You start talking about like primary keys and identifiers. Yeah, that's a great question, Jim. And I just want to say, again, I've been at it for a while. The tools of today will likely give you some form of access to the data that it is capturing. And that might look different across tools. At the end of the day, if it's in your company and it's supporting your projects, people with data brains and data engineering skills can look at those data sets and determine how to combine them together.
Okay.
But the single source of truth is definitely like, where's the project go first? Who's naming the project? Where's this employee's information? Who's capturing where they're, then there's the payroll that they get paid for jobs. Then there's the actual project work where they're assigned to jobs. Like all of that data exists somewhere. So it's not I'm just going to go press a button and everything's going to be everywhere all in one place. It's never going to be like that, but it can get to that in an automated routine. But again, step one is figuring out, all right, what do we even want to see? What do we need? Where do we have a deficit right now? But like on a practical functional level, export it out of a system, put it into a spreadsheet or a CSV. Go to the next system, export it out, put it into a CSV, and then learn how to connect to that data through Excel. And then it will immediately take you to Power Query where, again, total game changer. And everybody's got Excel gurus in their office, and every one of the gurus need Power Query training, either online, free. I don't care where you get it, YouTube it, find Oz, learn about Power Query, because that's where we get that data connected together and reportable.
Okay, so give me some examples of, Miles, you kind of started with the use case. What data can we capture out there and combine to start improving things that we do? I mean, what are some examples? I mean, you've both done this in real life for different companies. What are some examples of things, data that you were able to pull together that was useful and improve things? Can you give me any of that? I know sometimes that's difficult.
I can give you about 100, but I'll keep it specific. So we're supporting a firm right now that's a subcontractor, and they manage subcontract jobs across commercial construction everywhere. And they manage the day-to-day life of the work that's performed on site that day in a spreadsheet. Okay. And there is a spreadsheet per project. So because those are siloed into spreadsheets and the way that they're built to appear to look like Gantt charts, which is effective reporting for what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
We discovered, okay, all right, you're capturing consistent data across, we can pull this data from these spreadsheets and put it into an application. And where that improved the life is now they're able to, they're going to see data in real time that just basically builds the Gantt, okay, and all their over, under, all of their issues, things that delayed work, all in real time. But for the user themselves, they just go in and they're going to just check in that day. They're going to say, okay, well, I got this number of men. I'm doing this particular project. I'm doing it this number of hours. And then it just provides all that information back. But what it did and does for the user is now they don't have to go back to those spreadsheets and hand jam anything.
Okay.
Right. So, and because we have all that data captured from the literal job site, we can do 100 different things with it besides just tracking man hours and productivity.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Miles, what do you,
Well, I think one of the cooler visualizations that I was a part of that really educated me just on how difficult it is sometimes to just wrangle all of this different information. So we wanted a way to track training for our craft labor as a function of how long they've worked at a job, how long they've worked at a company, and what title they are. And so we had all these different criteria based off of a title change or a job change or how long they've been at the company and what specific training they were taking. And it seems relatively straightforward, but all of a sudden on the manual aspect, you had sign-in sheets, you had different instructors, then you had all these people moving around and a superintendent's like, I don't know, he was at my job last week for a couple hours, like, get off my back, I don't know. And to really report on how well we were training, a specific type of employee, in this case, our craft labor, all of a sudden we had to go out and get an LMS and realize that, okay, training needs to be done in a database to capture real like completion records. It just doesn't work on sign-in sheets and Excel sheets. So we had to go out and find a database for that, which was a typical LMS system. Okay. Then we realized that all of our good data on where people were moving was payroll, because ultimately, payroll is the true source of truth, because that's, we're paying them on what they actually worked. So that's where we got how they were going from job to job and how many hours they worked that day or total length in the company. Then we'd have to go into our HRIS system to figure out, okay, who are they and what title are they and when did they last move and who's their lead reviewer and who's looking out for them. And we were able to get all that together into this dashboard and then send it out to the jobs where now the superintendents, the field engineers, and the guys in the job trailer had immediate visibility into how well they were performing in this training requirement. And so instead of having to call 5 different people, hey, how's my guy doing on this, and where is he at here, and how do I make sure that he's successful and is winning and is completing his goals? Now they just open up a dashboard and all that's together in one, and they look at one number and it's just an immediate feedback on what needs to happen and how they can help continue to elevate this craft worker to meet his goals. And so really just cool example on 3 or 4 different databases. We had to go find a couple new ones, change some processes around, reevaluate how we were doing some things to ultimately feed this number that was really important to us as a company. It was really important that we supported our craft, our field workers with training and bonuses and incentives and things like that. So I just always love that example. It really helps kind of tie all the pieces together.
That's a good one. I want to pull something out that you said, because in almost, not all of our scenarios, but in almost most of our products and visualizations and reporting, whatever we're doing, we are leveraging data from the HR system and the payroll system. And once you figure out how to tie your HR system and your payroll system together, like, you can pull more things from it. So I think that's another area. Like, if you had to look specifically at a place to start trying to figure out how to tie your HR system and your payroll system. And I think this was unique to, no, maybe not unique across, but construction company has unique data in payroll because you do have craft labor. They're on projects for a short amount of time. They move to other projects. They shift around. They go away. They come back. And so we use payroll data a lot in an effort to know who's where, when, for a million different use cases inside an organization. So being practical, which I promised I would be, I try to figure out how to tie your HR system together and your payroll system together. And it's a ton of information you can leverage.
100% support that. Yep. You'll realize that payroll data can give you so many different avenues you never thought of before. It just gives you so much insight into the moving pieces of your people in the company. And super behind that statement.
Awesome.
So for the novice like me, if I'm pulling together like everything I'm hearing and trying to give advice to companies, big or small, but that just really haven't started down this path yet, the things that experts like Miles and Robin can do is identify data that you're already capturing that you may or may not even realize is data, number one, right?
Yes.
And pull that from all the different systems and places where it lives to create that one visualization, like Miles, like you were talking about. Here's all the information I need to know about this crafts person and the work they've done and the training they've received. Just sounds like really easy to a novice or somebody that hasn't tried to do that before, right? But as particularly as you start looking at a company with dozens, hundreds, even thousands of people, that's like a huge task, and there's a lot of manual work there to pull information from one system and another system and get it all in the same place. So when we talk about data capture and leveraging data, really, I think what I'm hearing is that what we're talking about is trying to find that data that already lives there and find ways to automatically pull it and group it together, so we're not doing this manual process that has lots of points of possibilities for error and takes a long time, so the information isn't timely. Because I think you made an important point, Miles, is we got to the point where now everything's dynamic. Now when I open up that screen, it gives me all the information as of right now, and it's not 3 months old because we just haven't gotten to manually pulling that data and entering it anymore. Am I kind of following that?
I think you are. Yeah, I think you are. I want to throw this out just because while you were talking about that, it just had this thought, like, I'm not going to go to your job site and become a concrete worker. I'm not going to be a craft labor person. I'm not welding. I'm not laying sheetrock. I'm not doing any of that. So data people are another form of craft labor. And maybe you should leverage that people that are great at their craft to do that particular type of job, so that you are not trying to do it, so that you can get an accurate outcome from the beginning. It's like, I don't feel like we're suggesting anything that a craft person who's specialized in a skill, which is something that all of construction can relate to. Also, understand people like Miles and myself who are skilled in our craft and also have industry knowledge. Like, we're going to look at your firm and understand some of the dynamics that are consistent, just like we were just discussing, like figure out how to tie your HR to your payroll system, and you're going to get started right there. I would just say, like, there's a time in which you need to pick the right skills, no differently than you would pick for your job sites. You're just picking the right skills for your data, but I don't know that people really look at it like we're craft labor, but we are.
Okay.
Just my 2 cents.
All right. You look like you want to add something there, Miles.
Well, I just was thinking, and I see a comment about data as it relates to construction, and I think there's a clear separation. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'm misspeaking, but I personally think there's somewhat of a separation between pulling data to better understand how you and your own internal company is doing and your internal people, versus pulling data on how well the productivity or construction process is going. And my experience is really just more in how do we elevate more of an operational excellence path using data internally as a company? How are people being trained, or how are they executing financially or through quality systems or safety, or how are we supporting ourselves and our building internally as a company? I haven't really quite gotten into the space where we're collecting hard productivity metrics or work in place metrics or things to analyze the efficiency of the build process with our trade partners and with the actual work being performed out on the job site. And so when I talk about data in construction, I'm talking about data in a construction company as a general contractor trying to help improve us internally, not necessarily how many units are we putting in place, per person, per whatever. I think maybe some heavy civil contractors that, do the majority of the work themselves, they have a large self-perform where productivity really matters. That's probably an important KPI for them to look at, is not only how are we performing from a financial and safety aspect, maybe, for example, but also how productive are we being? And I think that's a really cool space as well. I just don't have any familiarity with, but I know that that's important for a lot of people. And again, I'll go full circle. Before you get into this space, understanding what you want to see and what's important for you as a company, it was really going to dictate what you end up building in the long run, and what automations are in place and how much money you end up spending. If it's really important for you to have a dashboard that is accurate down to, the 15-minute interval, that's going to cost a lot more money than if you're okay with like, hey, this data is a day old, and it's or hey, you're connecting 10 different systems versus 2, and here's all the nuances and weird constraints we have to kind of jump through. All plays into your end deliverable and your end result in kind of this data world. So,
yeah, I think those are great comments. And, just to your point on capturing data on productivity and trying to improve productivity in construction through that data capture, I 100% agree with you. I don't know that I see very many people, at least at a project level, capturing that data and really doing anything with it yet. And one of the reasons I think that is because, back to what both of you said at the beginning of this, we haven't really defined the process yet. We haven't even really defined or agreed on what productivity we're going to measure and what productivity is, right? So, I mean, I've sat down in a room full of construction leaders at the the local leadership development forum and had conversations about productivity in construction, and the room can't agree on what that even means. We read all these articles about how bad productivity in construction is, and productivity in manufacturing has increased while productivity in construction has either stayed flat or declined, depending on whose data you want to look at. And it's really interesting to have those discussions with construction managers, construction executives, because there's not even really a broad understanding of what productivity is being measured there, right? So, to your point, Miles, yeah, what do you want to measure and then improve? Do you want to measure point speed? Do you want to measure the productivity of each individual trade? My answer would be no. I don't care as much about that. I want to measure productivity of the project, right? So, how long does it take the project from start to finish? Point speed's just one variable in there, right? Like how fast did the reinforcing company install the rebar on this deck this time? That's just one variable. There's also how much time lapsed between that and then the next trade starting. What are we really trying to measure and improve when we talk about productivity in construction? So I think
one thing you could probably get general consensus on, Jim, is like, and I don't know, maybe I'm misspeaking, but like delays on projects are real and they impact the productivity of every firm involved. So, maybe the focus should not be on, what are these high level metrics that, help us move the ball forward and what shows we're this, that. Maybe it's, all right, how do we make money when we're losing money, when something isn't working, and how do we go back and like have that conversation with all the people involved to track down where is this problem lying? Like, it could get very specific. Maybe it's too, I don't know. I always worry. Like, I like to be down. Let's get down to the practical level. Like, what problem literally are we trying to solve? And then what are the 1,500 problems we're not thinking about? There's like a treasure trove there. So it's not a surprise to me you can't get a general consensus on, like what are we actually trying to do? Because again, we hadn't all figured it out yet. Once we all figure it out, though, you should see gains where, it's not going to be flat anymore and it's going to be positive. experience. To me, that's an indicator that we're not tracking and analyzing the right data.
Well, and I think and this will jump over, this will kind of intersect with one of my other topics, right? But I think it's one of the reasons that we need to adopt kind of frameworks and common languages and goals like lean construction, because then we start to look, we start to document the process. We start to agree on the process and what the process is going to be, and then we can start to measure things. So if we're using a lean construction framework, and we're pull planning and we're doing our daily huddles, we can start to look at constraints. We can start to look at reasons that we didn't meet target goals, and then we can start to put those in buckets and chart those. But I think until we have that framework, some of that stuff is really hard to measure. To me, and Miles, to your point, I don't know that I've seen anybody doing that really well with productivity. Safety is a little easier to define, right? So we can define what's this is what an unsafe behavior means. This is what a near miss means. This is what, an incident is. And it starts to become a little easier to define. And because we can define it, then we can start to measure it. And then we can start to look at some metrics and some numbers. But
well, it's also because it's regulated.
Yeah, that's true.
Anywhere, anytime like you see stronger data, better practices, anywhere there is a regulation involved, because is a regulation, there are requirements, you've got to hit those targets, where, some of the other things we're talking about are not regulated. It's like we're trying to gain, but nobody really cares if we gain. Only we care operationally and internally if we gain. So yeah, safety is an easier lift because there's regulations and requirements that you have to follow. But again, like you can build a lot of really great best practices there. I think another thing people will do too is they buy these software packages, hand shelf software packages, because it's supposed to save the world. There's no such thing as a canned software package that's going to solve all your problems. So if you're looking for that one, it doesn't exist. You're still going to have people come in and help support the data that's not accounted for. I'm sorry, Miles, you had something?
Well, yeah, I'll just piggyback on that first. I think that data is becoming more and more popular, and so the shiny new tool that every software wants to sell you is a internally baked BI tool. And hey, we have a BI solution for you. You can slice the data any way you want. And what I'm finding is that although some of them are very good and it's a very good attempt, it just is still so limiting to see the big picture. And so yes, it'll help you jump into this space and it'll help give you some tools, but to really have a powerful, holistic look at things, a single siloed BI tool inside of a project management system or just a SaaS software in general really isn't going to cut it. And you'll find that out as you start using it more and more, especially if you want to connect to, a second source. Yeah, just something to be mindful of. And what you were saying earlier, Robin, just kind of sparked that thought into my head.
Great. I like it. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit because we have a couple of questions in there. And I thought this one was interesting. Do GCs care if their subs are collecting and leveraging data? Could this be a unique selling point for a small electrical contractor in order to attract and win more work? And then we had a LinkedIn user. By the way, this is somebody that has their privacy settings set, so we can't see who they are. But the answer was, as far as I know, GC doesn't care. Miles, what's your opinion here? I mean, I think number one, if I'm a small subcontractor, my goal would be to use data to improve my processes and my company. But from a GC standpoint, does the GC care what the trade partner's doing?
Absolutely. I think we just care about different things than maybe they do. So if I want to know, hey, how are your financials as a company over the last couple of years? Like, that's a lot of good data that I really care that they pay mindful attention to. Or what's your safety numbers at your company currently? Well, you can really only do that if you have a process in place to record and document and measure safety. Or how about how productive are you? What's your schedule proposal on this project? Can you do it in 3 months with 20 guys, or can you do it in 2 months with 10 guys? Now, that's a very unrealistic comparison, but it helps just get the thought of, as a general contractor, I really do care about your productivity. Probably at a much higher level than you do, because you're looking at very granular data on how well you're performing and how efficient you are in the field and how effective you are in the field. Me, I really only care about that because you now have confidence in the bid you're providing, or the numbers you're providing, or the schedule durations, or the commitments. So when you hand off commitments to a general contractor like me and you have data to support it, I love that. I love seeing that. I trust it more. I'm confident more. It's more collaborative. We can work together. And so, yes, I absolutely do care about the data that's being collected, but just I think at a very high end level use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That makes sense. I you know, in an era where, you know, especially on the GC side, we're moving more, you know, towards more alternative project delivery methods and, you know, early contractor engagement where the contractor's hired based on qualifications instead of necessarily price, because they're being hired when there's nothing to price yet. Certainly on the GC side, that data becomes, you know, really important and gives the owner some, you know, source of truth, or at least some sense of, you know, well-being that I can believe in what this general contractor is telling me. But since, you know, we as general contractors rely heavily on all of our trade partners, you know, selecting trade partners that also have data that back up the things that they say and the claims that they make and things like that, I think are equally important. So I would agree. I think the general contractor, you know, on some level does care if the trade partner is collecting data and leveraging data or not. And here, I don't know who this is, but this LinkedIn user says we are correct.
Well, and I also think it was interesting too, because could this be a unique selling point for a small electrical contractor? If you've got a firm that knows their data, they're going to be more accurate. And at some point that you will rise to the top and it will be distinguished. It will be obvious, because if you are data informed and data driven, it becomes very obvious to those who are around you and are looking at you and considering you, and then your accuracy rate will certainly increase. So to his question, you know, does this help distinguish you? I would say if everybody's not doing it, then it is definitely going to be, at this point in time, it would definitely distinguish you. It's hard for me to imagine not everybody involved in the common shared goal of a project wouldn't care about everybody's data prowess. I think that is a point in time we are now. I think in the modern universe later, 2 decades from now, people will look back on this conversation and not believe we were having it. So, you know, even if you had to start a little bit at a time, I would definitely distinguish yourself with data, because it'll just help you improve how you bid. And you'll be more, and this is where you guys make your money. Am I right? I mean, it's your bid and estimates. Like, you make your money based on your accuracy to bid. So if you need a place to start, there's your data starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to that basic concept. You know, you should be using data to improve your processes, which in turn improves your company. And then everything, you know, that helps you internally, but you know, that should also be at some point visible to your clients as well, which, you know, helps you get more business, which helps you improve your company. Miles, did you have something to add, or I thought Paul's question was interesting here. Do you find GCs are hiring more data scientists or engineers or analysts, or is it more outsourced to people like Robin? Or is this still just voodoo magic to many and we don't know what we're doing?
Voodoo magic. It's voodoo magic. It's no magic. involved.
I'd say yes to all of that. I think that, like any company, I don't know that construction's unique in this facet, but anytime you introduce a new skill set or department or wish or want, or it's something new in the company, the immediate reaction is to utilize existing employees to, part-time work on new initiatives, whether that's, right, wrong, or whatever. So a lot of times it gets started by a group of people or one talented individual, in addition to his regular work, kind of funneling information and kicking things off the ground and launching it. And what we're seeing now, in my experience, is that just doesn't work, and people are realizing it. You can't continuously improve using a beta focus group that is, 25% utilization of someone's real full-time job that's worried about owner requirements and making sure that, our core business is still making money over here. Our jobs, we're not a good company if our jobs don't make money. And so kind of that split shared resource model, I think, is slowly fading away, which is great to see. And so with that, there's more lean consultants, full-time lean people, continuous improvers like me, and then data scientists and people that can oversee the data implementation at a company. Now, granted, we're not data engineers, so absolutely our level is probably this much, and we lean heavily on the Robins of the world and the more robust, sophisticated companies, so that we can take this and expand it into, a huge environment, similar to like we lean on trade partners to build complex scopes on projects that we just don't have the capabilities to self-perform. Similar with data, we can't self-perform data engineering. We can manage it like we do our trades, but we really need to rely on the consultants, the companies, and the third-party developers to help really get a fully built system. Yeah,
I
think
love that.
that's a perfect analogy. I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, both of you, we're coming up on our time. So final thoughts, Robin.
My final thoughts are, if you really want to move forward, you've got to be practical. Otherwise, you're going to spend way too much money and get nowhere. Look at data workers, professionals, analysts as craft labor. Figure out where we can fit in. Miles said something perfect. Like, we can manage that. Let us do the work, or upskill your people. You have a ton of talented people. They show the aptitude. If they're the guru, start with them, and then just continuously upskill your people, and it'll all work out.
I like it. Miles, final thoughts?
Don't be scared of it, and don't think that it's just the new shiny toy that the industry has, like, oh, drone scanning, laser scanning, all these, like, not saying that those are the new shiny toys. I have a lot of projects that use those very effectively, but I guess what I'm trying to say is collecting data and visualizing data is only going to become more prevalent. And I mean, you look at any other industry that's out there, their backbone is on analyzing data, and that's how they've become more efficient with less resources over time. And in order for us contractors to really keep up with the changing delivery methods and changing relationships and changing industry, we really have to be more cognizant of holding ourselves accountable. And I think that's what a lot of people might be scared of, is once you have the data, now you're looking in a mirror a little bit. And I mean, it obviously is helpful and can maybe grow you faster, but don't be scared of it. Jump in, start small, incremental, and really focus on what matters to you, because what matters to your company might be totally different than my company. I might really have a strong emphasis on financial reporting right now. You might have a really strong emphasis on safety reporting. It could just be two different gaps or two different areas of focus that, a similar size company in terms of dollar values and employees need to focus on. So absolutely understand what you actually need and what you want before you jump in, and spend the time and money up front. A lot of people don't want to spend, $50,000 on a data lake. Oh my God, that's no way we need that. Well, you really do sometimes, if you want some of that fully automated, caked, like easy to read, easy to publish visualization. So that would be my my final closing thought.
All right, perfect. Well, listen, I really appreciate both of you joining me today. I know we will continue these discussions at some point, whether it's in another live, an audio event, just in the feed. But I really do appreciate you both joining me today. Miles, always great to get the perspective from the person that's down in the trenches doing this, and Robin, particularly on this topic of data, you're always the person I turn to and the person I listen to. By the way, Robin also live streams specifically about data with several other LinkedIn learning instructors from time to time, right?
Yes, once a month.
All right. So yeah, I had okay, once a month. So yeah, if you want to find out when Robin's going live, you can check out her profile on LinkedIn. If you want to, I'll do these lives twice a month, and then I have weekly audio events along with a newsletter. So if you want to find all of those things, visit my profile on LinkedIn. Make sure you follow me. Please subscribe to my newsletter. That gives you summaries on all of this information and all of these events. And thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate the participation in the chat with the questions and the comments. And I will see everybody next time. Thank you both, Miles and Robin.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Robin.
Thanks.